First, we're doing what films on the Vatican film list would we like to nuke? Which would we like to remove? By way of preface, it's interesting when you look at the films that sort of there's a lot of on this list. There's a lot of Italian neorealism. And you might say the film is too dominated by Italian neorealism. But the thing is that, like, I don't know how to get rid of all the Italian neorealism because, like, on an level of each individual film, I really want. they're all so great. They're great films, and I want them on the list. So I can't really complain because they all deserve to be on the list, you know. And in fact, if I were going to add more films, I would probably find myself adding even more films in that neo-realist tradition from other countries from later on. So it's weird because maybe there's something special about neorealism that suits it for the Vatican film list. I don't know, just throwing it out there. But I'm very happy to be able to say that there's at least one film in the neorealist tradition that I'll be able to get rid of. And this is probably my hottest take of the entire episode because some people might get mad at me. When we discussed this film in our episode, you and I, James, I think held back on our criticism a little bit because our guest was such a fan of the film and we didn't want to be impolite by being too hard on it. And in fact, even though we held back on our criticism, we still got a comment tearing into us for being insufficiently enthusiastic or something about the film. I don't remember exactly what they said.
Yeah, I'm going to try to pull it up right now.
Oh, okay.
No,
well, you don't
keep
have to
going.
be that salty about it.
You just keep going.
So it is Pasolini's The Gospel According to Saint... No, he doesn't even put Saint in the title. The Gospel According to Matthew. You know what?
Whoa.
It has a couple of good moments, but on the whole, this film just leaves me unmoved. Most of the film leaves me unmoved. I like the scene where Peter is he just betrayed Jesus and he's going out in the hallway or the alleyway and crying. I think that's a great scene. I think it's shot beautifully. It portrays the events of the Gospel of Matthew, but there's something about it that just feels emotionally detached or something. Yeah. I remember after we recorded our episode, maybe a few days afterwards, you and I were talking, James, and you said it's almost, and this is a very harsh statement, but this is what you said. You said it's almost as though Judas had decided to make a film about Jesus. Not in the sense that it's a subversive or that it's anti-Jesus, but that there's just this weird, like, coldness.
Well, yeah, I remember talking about it. And listen, I get it. I get why this is a film that a lot of people like. And there is a lot there to like. But I think my most fundamental critique, if I can remember the film well enough, this is like 2 years ago, but is that it really just felt like it was a film about faith from the perspective of having no faith, sort of like standing on the outside of the dramatic question of a yes for Jesus and sort of still withholding.
Right.
So like you're withholding that yes, you're withholding
and
faith.
Even in an artistic way.
You can't then go and do service to it. And this is not really me saying anything about Pasolini
more broadly.
I'm just evaluating this from an artistic perspective,
right.
And it just seems so evident to me that there's a kind of faithlessness that I'd probably be able to get more specific about it if I refreshed myself on the film before talking about this. I'm really just working with our memory of having looked at it 2 years ago. But yeah, I want to read this comment that we got on it. With all due respect, you fellows here have given a poor performance. Your analysis of Pasolini's work is extemporaneous hot air. So sad. And I'll just say as an aside,
it was extemporaneous.
There might have been some, and there might have been some hot air because I was maybe trying to like not be as like critical of it as I really felt. With a little bit of preparation, you could have provided a lot more information, engendered tons of questions. What remarkable art inspiring us to the sacred. How can you watch this film and not feel the love of God? How can you not be moved by Pasolini's murder? A broken man rising from his situation to create God-inspired art. That alone is a miracle. You could have covered a lot of ground, but you guys are lazy. thank God Heather was there. And thank God Heather was there. I have a lot of respect for Heather, and she did have a lot of nice things to say about the film that I thought were well observed. But yeah, this individual seems to be.
He didn't make the film after being murdered.
Well, and listen, like half the comment isn't really about the film at all, you know. So
right.
Anyway, so
I don't know.
Maybe enough said, but yeah, I think that's a good choice. I don't think it's a hot take at all. I think
okay,
to the chopping block.
I just want to add, like I echo some of it, and I watched this film very recently, actually, for the first time. And I echo some of what you said in terms of the coldness. What I said to a friend afterwards about it was that it kind of, this might come as a hot take, and this is a bigger topic, so we can't go into this probably. But for me, it kind of underscores a growing conviction I have that we shouldn't even be adapting the Gospels as films at all, because he's coming at the way that Pasolini is coming at it. It's very understandable, and I kind of respect kind of how he's coming at it as this sort of kind of pure translation of text into like as close to the filmic equivalent of just text that he can get. And the fact is that you know, he finds, I think the film is beautifully shot. Like he has some incredible visuals in there, but at the end of the day, his faithfulness to it as text, which isn't a pure faithfulness, but it is, you know, I think this is probably why people love the film, is because it's seen as cutting through the kind of like the showmanship, the spectacle that, you know, Hollywood was doing with gospel adaptations. Right. It's seen as this sort of more pure, back to the source kind of ressourcement kind of approach. And it's just not enough, you know. There's something about it that, again, it sort of raises the question of, can you even properly adapt in the sense of actually adapt, like translate something, bring something from one medium to another and capturing its full essence. Like I think we'd all agree that just by the nature of sacred scripture, you can't actually do that with a film adapting
and
scripture.
we did talk about precisely this on the episode, and I do think that episode is a discussion worth listening to, even if you're not necessarily getting like our full like broadside critique of the film. I think it did bring up some like interesting considerations about adaptation of the Gospels, which we do end up fleshing out in later episodes as we return to this theme, specifically most recently in The Chosen. Right. But great.
Yeah, and it's a running thing.
Choice.
And I would just say this, one more quick thought on that is just that this isn't to say that to take away from productions that are doing this, because there's still like valid aspects to them, but it's the kind of thing where, I think it's a question to ask as Catholic filmmakers, like should we be doing this in the first place? I can produce something that's like not totally bereft, but is this the best use of our time and our resources? I'm starting to tilt over towards probably not. There's probably other forms of poetic cinema that are better uses of our time, and it's interesting to see that kind of play out. But on the flip side, I'll just say again, for the people who love the film, it's understandable because the context it comes out in is that it's kind of undercutting all this kind of BS Hollywood style, and that's a real thing that happened. And so the question is kind of how do we take the benefits of that, and then how do we not throw all the babies out with all the bathwater, I guess is the question.
And by the way, like that BS Hollywood style, as you call it, that'll come up in my removals as well. Nathan, this is why I've been wanting to have you on one of the Chosen season discussions, and hopefully that can happen in the future, because that's an issue that I want to get on. And I think that because we often have brother Josh with us, and he is a painter, I think that it'd be very interesting to have the discussion with both of you present about adapting the gospel, in these two different media.
Yeah. All right. So what's next on the
gospel
list?
According to Matthew? And I would say, maybe replace that with the Miracle Maker. I think the Miracle Maker is like a far superior adaptation of the gospel.
For sure.
Moving on, though, might as well, I'm going to reorder my list because you mentioned Hollywood BS, to Ben-Hur. I'm taking Ben-Hur off the list. I just don't think it's a good enough film, to be honest. There's a lot of fluff in Ben-Hur. And also the stuff that there's a lot of great stuff too. There's a lot of fluff, so that's an artistic question. I don't think it's really truly enough of a religious film to at least be on the religion section of this list. I haven't. Now, the other thing is I haven't seen a lot of these other Hollywood biblical epics, so I'd be interested if there's one that's better or more deserving. I've seen Cecil DeMille's The Original Silent King of Kings. That's interesting. There's also some like exploitation with like Mary Magdalene dancing around scantily clad in the first scene. So you get that kind of like Hollywood cynicism, going on in that. And so I'm very sympathetic to these critiques of these like Hollywood biblical epics. Again, it's a lot of great stuff in there as well. But I think as a film in the religion section, I don't know that it merits being on the list. Any comments?
Yes. So
yes,
I will go to way. Ben-Hur is not my favorite film on the list. It's not in my favorite lists at all. However, one thing it does have that certainly the Pasolini's film doesn't is, and this is the reason why this film was watched religiously in my own household growing up, coming from a devout Protestant family. We watched it around Easter time every year, as many do. And I would say the reason we did that is because this is a film that it's one of the few films that approaches, and I know you guys talked about this in your discussion, the reverence of the person of Christ, by not right. showing, his face. Not that that's, the best way to do it or the only way, it's one way, but it is very powerful. And the film, I would say this film, I would not, again, in a future version of this list, I don't know if for me, Ben-Hur would make it, but in this, I'm happy to see it on here and in the religion section because it truly it cultivates a religious sense. It's a deeply pious film in the full sense, I think. And just to add on to my comments about not adapting the Gospels, this isn't adapting the Gospels. It's a it's a fictionalization around the time of the Gospels, and it's a totally different kettle of fish than adapting.
And
I
also think that one of the things I like about the list more broadly is that there are some like populist choices on there, and this is like the people's choice. It's like
that's fair.
So I think that I can see why you might remove this, but I think that you would impoverish the list.
As a whole, I think that like removing it with the caveat that it should be replaced with some kind of other American biblical epic of the era.
I just think that there is no other American biblical epic that approaches the level that Ben-Hur does.
Maybe so, but it's just not enough about like religion.
Yeah, so maybe it gets moved to a different section on the list.
This maybe underscores the poverty of like the films being made about these kind of things.
Well, no, that's what I'm saying. But I think that for reflection, one of those should be on there. I'm not that familiar with the genre as a whole.
Sure.
So I mean, that's one of those where like I could see arguments for keeping it.